Defiant statement. There is nothing you can do to me. Do your worst.
The day the power of love overrules the love of power, the world will know peace. This is a famous quote by Gandhi, roughly about 4 years before he turned into a genocidal fiend of nuclear destruction. Despite Gandhi's decline, this quote struck me, and made me ponder a few things about my own life. What causes am I willing to die for? Will our world ever know global prosperity? Did that girl I saw at the grocery store a few weeks ago make advances towards me? And the most thought-provoking one of them all, can you beat Starcraft 2 Wings of Liberty as a pacifist? Before we begin, the rules on this one are pretty easy to explain. I can't kill anybody. If an AI or another faction kills a unit, that's entirely allowable, cause what the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm allowed to injure certain units, however the second I land a blow that is fatal, I have to reload an old save. Thirdly, I use the word anybody because this wording prohibits me from killing Zerg, but allows me to destroy buildings and miscellaneous units or objectives. Lastly, the difficulty will be set on casual for the entire run. Not because it's the easiest difficulty. In fact, there's quite a few missions in which normal, hard, and even brutal are possible. In fact, I dare say some of those are actually easier, but I like having it stay one consistent difficulty for the entire challenge. Without further ado, let's jump straight into Liberation Day. Wait, actually before we do that, I feel that it's incredibly vital for you to know that I know how to change the game speed now. There's 2 universal truths in the Davey Gunface comment section. Either I'm going to get told I sound like Mitten Squad, or I'm going to get told that I can change the game speed. I got the memo by the 489th fucking comment. For the love of God, please stop. Anyways, Liberation Day. Let me just say, you know a challenge is good when Liberation Day on casual is difficult. This segment in the direct center of the map in particular encapsulates the biggest struggle we're going to be going through in this entire challenge. If I can't kill anybody, and there are segments where enemies are directly in the way of the objective, they can fire at me and my men with absolutely no repercussions. On the contrary, if I stop controlling my units for even a fraction of a second, they're going to auto-fire at the nearest soul and blast them to Kingdom Come, invalidating the entire run. There is going to be a lot of AI manipulation here. In this mission in particular, I had to sacrifice almost all of my Marines in order to sneak to the Dominion transport vehicle and destroy it. Once the vehicle is destroyed, we get a small legion of civilians to firebomb the nearby headquarters. At this point, the only thing we have to do is have Raynor tank a few of the Viking shots, while the civilians do the rest. Luckily, the Outlaws is a lot easier, because aside from SCVs, we unlock one of the best units in this entire playthrough, the Medic. Like I said previously, you're going to be under a lot of abuse during this playthrough, so anything you can do to heal off the damage or mitigate it whatsoever is heavily appreciated. That being said, you don't have to kill any Dominion on this mission whatsoever, as long as you kill all the buildings. So I amassed a comfortable amount of medics and marines, and I shift right-clicked all their buildings and beat the mission with no hassle whatsoever. Up next is our first defense mission, 0 Hour. Defense missions with this rule set are especially joyous. Even if attack waves are as little as 10 supply a minute, in under 10 minutes you're going to have to be repairing over half of a maxed out army. Fortunately, there are 2 things that make 0 Hour stupidly easy. Firstly, since so many Zerglings are being sent in at first, they very quickly create a clog where you only have to repair off about 15 Zerglings worth of damage at any given moment. With a base that can saturate up to 27 workers on minerals, that's incredibly easy. I did make a mistake near the end though, where I lost 2 of my bunkers and the Zerg was starting to overrun my base. This is where the mission turns from laughably easy to literally impossible to lose. The defeat condition on this map, rather than losing the artifact or the platform, is actually just losing all of your buildings, meaning you can do what every salty Terran player does best, and float random buildings to inaccessible locations on the map. On lower difficulties, the Zerg don't utilize Mutalisks, meaning there's no way you can lose these buildings. This definitely isn't going to be the case for all missions though. Of course there's going to be missions where the enemy utilizes flying units, but there's one thing that counters this the most in particular. The enemy AI are map-hacking bastards, and know your exact location no matter what. Whether you're floating away a barracks to the bottom right, or have a fleeing SCV in the top left, the AI knows where you are. So anytime you do this, you either need an exit strategy or a way to beat the mission outright. 0 Hour is the only mission in which this isn't the case, so fortunately I beat it pretty easily. After this, we gain access to the Hyperion, and I decided to do smash and grab first. What I decided to do was float 2 barracks all the way to the mission objective, and queue Marauders right by the Stone Zealot trigger. During this, I suicide my starting forces, and lift off my command center to obtain the 4 Protoss relics available for research. Once I obtained all 4, there was nothing stopping me from pressing F2 and right-clicking all the Stone Zealots in order to beat the mission. The Devil's Playground is essentially the same strategy as always: get the SCVs on the top right, harvest as much minerals as possible, and use my starting Reapers in order to get minerals across the map. Nothing crazily unique that you haven't seen before. What makes this a lot more painful though, is microing the Reapers to not shoot anything. On the Reapers you start with, that's not too bad. Nothing that would challenge my 925 hours in Clicker Heroes, and it's not a meme. I regret this immensely. Poor life choices aside though, they aren't really what's the issue here. What is an issue though, are the small Reaper squadrons you find throughout the map. If there are any enemies by them whatsoever, you need to have millisecond perfect timing in order for them to not completely decimate the closest Zergling. It still wasn't too difficult though, and I even got the research. You may be asking how, since it directly states that I need to kill the Brutalisk, and it brings me great sorrow to inform you that the Brutalisk died from a lava-induced heatstroke. What brings me even more sorrow is the fact I was a fucking idiot again and lost all my SCVs. After Raynor took pity on me, I got all the required minerals and left Redstone for good. Once I got back on the Hyperion, I gained access to my first research option between the Shrike Turret or Fortified Bunker. I think it's kind of obvious which one I went for here. But while we're on the topic of upgrades, I should probably talk about the Armory. There's only 4 upgrades I would really call essential for this run. Both Medic upgrades, CC upgrades, SCV upgrades, and Ghost upgrades. I could go more in depth, but almost every upgrade outside of these main 4 are me just throwing credits at the wind because there might be a hyper niche scenario in which I really need the Marauders' extra 25 health. I hate to spoil the video early, but there never was. Welcome to the Jungle was up next, and it was incredibly annoying. I wouldn't necessarily say difficult, but I was miserable most of the way through it. I ran an SCV Medic Army comp, since the only thing I have to worry about is losing my SCV, which is harvesting Terrazine. There's 2 main issues with this mission that made it way more aggravating than it realistically should have. Firstly is your base placement. Until the Tal'Darim start sending out Void Rays, repairing your base isn't a big issue. What is an immense issue is when the enemy AI decides to stop whacking your base. The AI on lower difficulties have an incredibly weird priority list that I could never get the hang of. Let's take 2 basic units, a Stalker and a Zealot. If you have an SCV repairing a barracks, the Zealot is always going to keep whacking the barracks no matter what. In the same scenario with a Stalker, the Stalker is always going to focus the SCV first no matter what. This gets muddled further when you throw in different army units, attack patterns, movement options, terrain, maps. You get the point. The second and more blatant issue is the Tal'Darim shutting down the Terrazine altars. It's not really an issue actually gathering them, but rather getting to them. Inevitably, you're going to aggro a lot of units on your grand hallucinogenic crusade, and it's going to hurt. A lot. Most of the mission's difficulty here came in making a route rather than the actual mission itself. After what felt like an eternity, I managed to get to the very last Terrazine altar, with enough spare units to pick up the remaining 2 Protoss relics. With the newfound research, I upgraded my unit's health, since attack speed isn't going to matter too much this run. After this, we have the Evacuation, which was luckily incredibly easy. Although Hansen only sends out a few Marines to escort the colonists, getting to those Marines is infinitely harder when they're supported by a medic count well into the double digits. There wasn't too much issue here, so now we have a choice between Outbreak and the Great Train Robbery. Since Outbreak isn't even close to possible, Train Robbery it is. And this is where I'm going to make an incredibly bold claim. A hot take, if you would. Out of every challenge I've ever done, uploaded or not, Starcraft or otherwise, this is by far the most strenuous mission I've ever had the displeasure of going through. So remember how in 0 Hour I told you the AI has a tendency to vision hack? Well, they do it in full force here. Since you're not allowed to kill the units protecting the trains, you're going to inevitably gather an immense amount of Dominion at your door, and you're going to need to evacuate quickly. So what do you have to do to beat this? Mass fucking Reaper. There's absolutely no other choice. You need the mobility, and you need to be able to scale cliffs. There's a few issues here. Firstly, Reapers are a pain to make in Wings of Liberty. Since you used to need a tech lab in order to make Reapers, it's a lot harder to mass produce than a unit like a Marine or a Medic. Secondly, Reapers have terrible damage against the trains. You need to micro your heart out to the fullest in order to actually kill them. Thirdly, they're incredibly squishy. If you get caught out whatsoever, whether it be the Marauder patrol team or the hundreds of Dominion soldiers tracking down your location, you have to reload. Fourthly, the most infuriating of them all, they have an incredibly quick firing animation. If you miss micro them for even the tiniest fraction of a second, you have to reload. The only secret to beating this mission consistently is liftoff micro. I'm not even joking. If you don't have buildings spread across the entire map, the Dominion are always going to track down your Reapers, and they're going to kill them incredibly quickly. You know those dumb videos online where somebody does something incredibly stupid and there's that big disclaimer, "Don't try this at home"? I'm slapping one here. Don't try this at home. Don't even think about it. Just do anything else. I would recommend cock and ball torture over this. Avoid it at all costs. After my soul is completely crushed, Ghost of a Chance is up next, and this is where the run has the slightest amount of hope ingrained into it. The mission itself is fairly easy. The only problem is the missile turrets for blatant reasons, and I know there's gonna be that guy in the comment section who informs me that the missile turrets have a dude in it, which is why I never outright kill them. I just happen to witness a lot of unfortunate burning malfunctions in my time. Once we get this mission over with, we unlock ghosts. I cannot stress enough how much of a godsend ghosts are in this run. Firstly, and most obviously, they have a permanent cloak and a campaign pretty infamous for little to no detection. Secondly, they're the only unit I can utilize that can attack and have a hold fire option. This makes my life so much easier. Gone are the days I have to fear the possibility of accidentally shooting a pedestrian because I right-clicked too slow. Moving onwards, up next is Cutthroat. With Permanent Cloak, there's an incredibly impractical but efficient route to solid snake our way to the mission objective. Once I got the route completed and removed all the missile turrets, there was nothing stopping me from right-clicking the planetary fortress and beating the mission. After this I attempted to beat the dig, but without my 2 command center upgrades, it was going to be near impossible, so I moved on to Engine of Destruction. The only eventful thing that happened during the entire mission was me pulling the Loki for goofs, and having Tychus respond by shattering the Geneva Convention and nuking all of my medics into a shower of blood and gore. I thought it was just a harmless prank, but the more I think about it, the more I do have to agree I'm probably going to be the guy who turns somebody into a murderer someday. Starting Media Blitz, the first thing I had to do before anything else was to ensure my Odin's death. Luckily there were a few Dominion soldiers who made that incredibly easy, doing the tried and true RTS technique of blocking a gargantuan 18-story tall mech with a few Marines and cars. Once Tychus flies into the air with all the grace of a decomposing penguin, we gain control of our base. The general strategy for this mission is to transport ghosts around the map with Hercules, destroy all the detection around the broadcast towers, and stealth our way to victory. Other than a few missile turrets by each broadcast tower, there's only one detection unit in the entire map, a single Raven in the top left. I was pretty intimidated by this at first, but since Ravens are remote-controlled drones with no personnel on board, I can destroy it with no guilty conscience. By this point, there's nothing in the entire map that can detect our ghosts on the objective, allowing us to gain access to all 3 broadcast towers after an incredibly drawn-out dialogue segment. After beating Media Blitz, we gain access to CC upgrades and Tiny Thors, and we're able to move on to the dig. The dig is just entirely a macro mission. You need to do whatever you can to get an economic lead so you can amass a legion of ghosts. The CC upgrades are extremely important here, since it mitigates the fire damage on buildings, repairs them to half for free, and gives me access to mules. Muse? I don't know. While all of this sounds minuscule at first, you have about 7 minutes in order to train about 17 or so ghosts, so it is immensely appreciated. The best way to start is to put a barracks on the low ground by the top ramp, and claim the second base location by the bottom right. The top typically falls a lot quicker than the bottom, so it's important you send your ghosts to the top ramp first. Once you get enough ghosts in time, it's GG. Since the Protoss doesn't send out observers regardless of difficulty, the only thing that can damage the drill are warp prism reinforcements, scouts, and colossi. After this, I amassed more than enough buildings and resources to spam repair the drill and beat the mission with no issue whatsoever. Beating the dig, we gain access to the prophecy missions. You can't do the prophecy missions. The Moebius Factor was just incredibly boring, and is mostly the same thing you've seen time and time again. Get free units by Data Core 1, target fire it down. Set up units by the cheat spot by Data Core 2, target fire it down. Get the free units all over the map, drop them behind Data Core 3, target fire it down. Beat the mission, Supernova. Supernova remains largely the same. Build Banshees, fly them to the bottom right corner, fly by the artifact, clear detection, and destroy the vault. This time, however, I made sure to keep my command center alive, and built Wraiths so I could clear the observers by the artifact vault. So I got everything set up. I got my small legion of Wraiths and Banshees, got them into position, got all the research on the map, and then I realized something. My units weren't getting hit, even though I haven't scanned the area yet. This is where I found out that the Protoss don't have observers available on casual. God damn it, Blizzard. With my newfound research, I was able to upgrade into a command center reactor and move on to Maw of the Void. The strategy is pretty simple. On casual, Xel'Naga Vault only has a few hundred HP, so all I have to do is send over a few battlecruisers and Yamato it back to the Void whence it came. First we have to clear the landing and... oh no. Yep, we made it this far without killing anybody, but this is where the run technically ends. You cannot proceed in this mission without killing the 3 stalkers at the beginning. What makes this more infuriating is that this mission is really easy to do as a pacifist outside of this initial objective. I know it's mandatory and I'm not at fault whatsoever, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't demoralizing. Regardless, I pushed on. I amassed 7 battlecruisers and a Hercules full of SEVs, and flew my way to the mission objective. Although they were towering air forces constantly attacking me, I made it to the vault with 3 battlecruisers alive, which is more than enough damage to destroy the vault and beat the mission. After this, we can finally move on to Char, starting with the gates of HE double hockey sticks. And if Maw of the Void was when the run technically ended, this is where the run just flat out ends. The Zergs start coming out within the first few seconds from the mission starting, and there's no possible way to survive their onslaught for long enough to get anywhere close to 100 supply. Even when I turned the game speed to baby's first RTS, it still wasn't remotely close. Although the run is entirely over, I still wanted to see if I could beat the rest of Char as a pacifist. When you neutralize a Zerg threat, you have to go for Shatter the Sky since Belly of the Beast is strictly impossible. At first, I was heartbroken to find out that this wasn't going to be doable either, until I made a discovery. One that would change everything. Let's play Davey Gunface's fun time game show. The question today is, why was this mission so hard to beat? Is it A, the Zerg have too much defenses around the coolant towers? Is it B, the Zerg have too much units sent towards my base too early? Or is it C, you're on fucking brutal, you actual Mongoloid? If you guessed C, you're entirely correct. With a newfound wisdom of not playing the game on the hardest difficulty, I found a way to beat the mission. There's a location slightly below the first tower, in which the Zerg has no way of detecting cloaked units. For the top left tower, I sent in my starting battlecruiser and Banshees to kill it, finishing it off with the Yamato cannon. For the bottom right tower, I transported my starting biological force there, and target fired it down with nearly no opposition. Lastly, for the final coolant tower, I built 2 battlecruisers and a Hercules filled with SEVs to Yamato it down quickly. The only issue with this is the Leviathan. I don't know if I'm just dumb, but I never got a hang of this monstrosity's patrol pattern. I had to reload a few times, but as soon as I got to the final coolant tower, it went down instantly and I beat the mission. Up next is All In. The strategy I formulated to beat this mission is pretty devilish. I was going to train a small amount of ghosts to block off the platform from incoming Zerg attack waves, while having another squadron of ghosts available to send Kerrigan back to her base whenever she came by. Whenever overseers tried to fly by, I was going to mind control the hive mind emulators in order to keep my ghosts unseen. However, as you probably could have guessed, this didn't go as planned. Firstly, the Zerg comes in too fast in order for this plan to actually work. And secondly, Nidus Worms can spawn right by the artifact, and the Leviathan can spawn Mutalisk to attack it directly. So you know what? I give up. Gandhi was fucking wrong. War, bloodshed, and pain are the only things I crave in this pitiful excuse for immortal life. Welcome to Can You Beat All In on Brutal as a Genocidal Monster. The general strategy is go fuck yourself. I'm gonna go kill everybody and everything. Enjoy. Hey guys, Davey Gunface here. I'm rebranding into a Bloons Tower Defense channel because I think Starcraft was a dumb game. Bye.